What's up guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we have a very exciting video that I've never done before. We're gonna be talking about my favorite leg day exercises, and I'm gonna be bringing you through each one to tell you what form fixes to make and to make sure you're doing them properly. If you like this type of video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if there's any other videos like this you'd like to see, comment down below. But today, like I said, we're gonna be talking about leg day exercises, specifically the ones I like to use to grow my legs and my glutes, and we have 3 different categories I'll be bringing you through. All 3 of these categories are very important to implement in your split to make sure you are training your glutes and your legs in a well-rounded fashion. So we have horizontally loaded exercises. I'm going to be showing you 2 of those, 2 of vertically loaded exercises, and then 2 hinge movements as well. So let's get into it. First up, you guys, we have hip thrust, which you probably could have guessed is one of my favorites. Hip thrust is a very versatile movement because you can do a lot of different rep ranges, a lot of different tempo alterations, pauses, different things like that. But the biggest thing to get down with your hip thrust is your setup. I cannot stress that enough. First thing you want to look at is the height of your bench that you're using. A lot of gyms, the benches are really high for some people, so you want to find something like risers that you can set up, or if you want to get one of these boxes, we have them from Titan. You can get them on Amazon. There's a 12-inch side, a 14-inch side, and a 16-inch side. This will help you make sure you use a side that's perfect for you. So I'm going to show you how you can make sure that you have a perfect bench height. So what you want to look for is that the height of this is about your knee, at where your knee is when you're up at the top. So if you're not sure like if it's a good height or not, you can prop up your phone directly to the side of you to first film yourself before you do a set of your hip thrusts to make sure when you're up at the top, you have pretty much a straight line from your knees to your shoulders and that everything's pretty flat. If you are instead something like this, where your knees are a little bit above your shoulders, it's too low, and vice versa. If your shoulders are above your knees, it's too high. So that's the first thing you want to check for. Next thing you want to look for is where you're placing your feet when you actually go into the hip thrust. So going back down, you want to make sure that when you're up at the top of the hip thrust, that you have about a 90-degree angle at your knee. If your feet are too close to your butt, at the top like this, you're gonna feel more in your quads because your quads are stretching because of the knee flexion. If your feet are too far out, you're gonna feel a lot in your hamstrings because you're also getting a lot of hamstring engagement with your feet that far out. So make sure your feet are at a 90-degree angle. I'll show you really quick a good tip if you don't know how. So if you grab some small plates, you can set yourself up pretty easily to find that 90-degree angle. So you're just gonna sit down where you would start your hip thrust, put the plates right next to your knees, then put your feet where the plates are, and then go up. So that's the second thing that you want to look out for, and then you're ready to hip thrust. For hip thrusting, I do recommend having a pad. Like we have, this is a new color that's coming. We don't have it out just yet, but these are really helpful for hip thrusts, especially when you start going heavy, because there's much more padding than a regular barbell pad, which will usually leave you with bruising. So this is gonna have more padding, so when you go heavier, which is really important to do with hip thrusts, you'll be better. Last couple tips is you really wanna make sure the bar is even across your pelvis. If it's too much on one side or too much on the other side, it's gonna feel weird when you're going up. This bar has a mark in the middle of the bar, so it's easy to tell. Not all of them will, so just make sure that you're pretty even as much as you can. Pull the bar in, put your feet into place. Again, if you want to use the plates, you can do that. And then when you're going up, what's really important is to keep your chin tucked and head forward, and to scoop your butt as much as you can, as well as doing a little bit of a hinge. If you just let your head go and go like this, you're really not going to be getting much of your glutes, and you're going to probably feel it more in your lower back. So instead, just go like this. Make sure to lock out your arms like this at the top. It's gonna get more lat engagement, which will help you with your glute engagement. Make sure you get a full extension, and then go down. You don't have to hold for that long, it was just for the video, but that is how you hip thrust. So let's get into the second exercise. Okay guys, second exercise for horizontally loaded, we have hyperextensions. This is gonna be a little bit more of an isolation movement than the compound. So you're not gonna be going as heavy as you were with the hip thrust that we just did. This is a good movement for more towards like the end of your workout. Now, with this movement, we wanna be feeling it in our glutes, as well as kind of like the top of your hamstring a little bit. If you start feeling it in your back, you wanna change the way you're doing this exercise, which I'll show you here. So you wanna make sure that this pad is not too high, otherwise it will get in the way of the range of motion. So right now it's too high for me, and you'll see it's kind of sitting at a point where here at this point in the movement, it's kind of going into my hip bone, which makes it hard to get a smooth range of motion. I can still go down, but it's just jabbing into me and it doesn't feel comfortable. So I like to make sure that it's low enough where it's still obviously all over my quads, but I'm able to do the full range of motion without anything going into my pelvis or my hips and come up. So after you have the placement of the pad in a good place, now it's time to make sure that you're not using your back. Obviously with this movement, with bending over, it's very easy to engage your back, and in order to take that out, we actually want to round our back throughout the movement. So when you're going down, before you go down, round your back like this. You can hold onto a plate if you want to, you can put bands on, but keep your back rounded. So when you go down and up, you're taking out your lower back, and you're feeling it all in your glutes and hamstrings. You can even touch your glutes to make sure you feel it more, or have a gym partner do that for you. But you should be feeling it here and a little bit under here. If you feel it in your back, make sure your back is rounded. Okay, now we're moving on to hinge exercises. I'm gonna start off with good mornings. Good mornings, very advanced / intermediate exercise. So you really wanna make sure your form is good with this before you start adding on weight. And if you're someone who's more a beginner, I probably would avoid these for a little bit. Reason, just like we were with the hyperextension, is that you can engage a lot of your back, and if you're really loading this, because you can load it more than your hyperextension, you might hurt yourself, which is obviously what we don't want. So I'm gonna bring you through exactly how to have good form with this and avoid that, and make sure you're feeling it in your glutes and hamstrings, which if you're doing this right, you're gonna feel it a lot. So first, most important thing is placement on your back. We don't want this in like a high bar position where it would be on your traps. We want it on your rear delts, like a low bar. So you're gonna go under the bar and make sure it's on your rear delts. This would be like a high bar. We don't want that, we want it down here. Lift off and step back. Now it's really important to have a really good bracing in your core during this movement. So you wanna take a deep breath in, brace your core, and then you're gonna go down to the movement. I can't brace my core and talk at the same time, but you wanna, when you go down to the movement, push your hips back. You're not just bending over. You really, really, really want to think about just pushing your hips back as far as you can to get a really deep stretch in your hamstrings and your glutes, and then engage your glutes and your hamstrings. You literally want to think about just squeezing your glutes and hamstrings to bring you up and stand up. If you're just going down like this, you're going to be using a lot of your back to get you back up, and that's not what we want. We really want that glute and hamstring engagement. Okay, the second movement we have for hinging, RDLs. RDLs are my favorite. They're really good for beginners too. I mean, it's gonna be hard to get your technique down, but there's a little bit less likelihood of possibly hurting yourself like you had with a good morning with RDLs, because the weight's not on your back, it's in your hands. Now, RDLs often get confused for stiff leg deadlifts, so I really wanna make sure you guys understand the difference right now. First thing you wanna make sure is if you're at a squat rack, set up the hooks so that you can have the bar ready to grab right from here. You can grab it from the ground, but it's just gonna be easier and save more energy if you're just grabbing it already in the air. So grab it like this, stand up, and step back. Now what's really important is that you keep the bar pretty much against your legs the entire movement. If you're going too far out, you're gonna be using a little bit of your lower back. And when you go down into the movement, your main goal is to push your hips back. You're not just reaching down, you're pushing your hips back. So think like this, and you wanna stop just below your knees, where your hips are fully flexed, and then stand up. What a lot of people do, they think they need to go down as far as possible, so they push their hips back to this point, but then they keep going and start engaging their lower back. This whole section here would just be my lower back. That's not anything to do with my hamstrings or my glutes, and we don't want that. So think, push your hips back, keep the bar as close as you can, stop where your hips are fully flexed, and then stand up. Now we're moving on to the vertically loaded exercises. These are kind of like your main exercises that you think of: squats, split squats, lunges, things like that. There's a lot of different variations that you can use, but I'm gonna show you my top favorite ones that I like to implement, starting with the squats. So lately I've been doing a lot of front squats to work on my quad strength and my quad growth. But if that's not your thing, if you prefer to work on your posterior chain or just overall leg development, you can also just do back squats, which I will be getting back to at some point. And if you're really, really focused on your glute strength and your glute growth, then you want to do low bar squats. Reason being, low bar squats, I'll show you right now, you're going to be in a little bit more of a bent over position, you're gonna have more stretch in your glutes, which will activate them more. So this would be a high bar squat. You're gonna keep your torso more upright. And you're gonna stand up. You're gonna get a bit more quad engagement with this and a bit less glutes. Like I said, you're not flexing your hips as much in this as you are a low bar squat. With the low bar squat, you're gonna have the bar a little bit lower on your back, on your rear delts here. Stand up. And because it's lower on your back and you wanna keep the bar over midfoot, you're gonna have to have a little bit more of a forward lean with this. That's gonna create more of a stretch in your glutes at the bottom. So my torso is more forward, my glutes are more stretched, and it'll help me just get more engagement in my glutes. What you wanna look out for, there's a lot of things, but some of the main ones, like I said, keeping the bar over your midfoot as much as you can. If the bar starts going to your toes, you're bending over too much. You wanna make sure you're still keeping your chest up and your torso as up as possible, but you still want a little bit of that forward lean, keeping the bar over midfoot and standing up. A couple of the things you wanna look out for is your knees. So when you're going down into the squat, I'm gonna turn to you guys so you can see. You wanna make sure that your knees are pointing outwards like this. If you notice that your knees are caving in a little bit, you really wanna work on keeping your knees outward, work on abduction movement to help with that. Another thing you wanna look out for is butt wink, which is basically when you go to the bottom of the squat, if your pelvis kind of tucks under like this and then flips back up when you're going up, that's called butt wink. What we want is for your pelvis to stay neutral throughout the entire movement so that you don't injure your lower back. If you are dealing with butt wink, usually it's a mobility issue, but it could also just be a lack of control overall, a lack of core control, or like I said, just your hips in general. So that was the first exercise, and now let's go to the second exercise for vertically loaded movements. Sixth and final exercise, Bulgarian split squat, which I know a lot of you don't like, but they are fantastic single leg exercise to really help with your growth and also balancing out your legs a little bit if you're dealing with some strength issues or imbalance issues rather. So as you can see, we have this for Bulgarians. It's a nice round surface so that it can conform to your ankle and it's a lot more comfortable than if you're on like a bench. If your gym doesn't have one of these or you don't have one at your house, I highly suggest getting one, at least for your house, and you can use a leg extension, or not a leg extension, a hamstring curl instead at your gym. Just put your leg on that. So if you're trying to go more for your glutes, you really wanna make sure that you have a nice big stance out. This is where people get confused a lot of times. How far do I stand out? How do I make sure I'm in a good place? So I've seen a couple different ways that you can do this. One is you can just take a big step out like I just did now, so you know where you wanna be, and then put your foot up. Another way I've seen people do it is they'll go down on the ground like this, make sure they're in a good spot, and then they'll put their foot up. It's really up to you what you wanna do, but I would not suggest just starting out randomly here and just hopping around. Not a good method. So again, if you want to get your glutes more so than your quads, you want a big step out, put your foot up, and then you want to make sure that you have your torso forward like this, like it already is. The more upright I am, the more I'm going to feel it in my quads, and also the more my back quad's going to feel it, and my hip flexor in the back as well. Because as you can see, I'm kind of getting a big stretch in this quad, which I don't really want. I want to be as forward as possible. So you're going to go like this, push your hips down and back, and stand up. You want to make sure at the bottom, if you're trying to get your glutes, that your knee angle is as big as possible. If your knee angle is kind of small like this, you're going to feel more quads, which we don't want. So keep your knee like this, down and back, and stand up. Now if you did want quads, you would just have a smaller step forward, put your foot up, keep your torso more upright, and you do want more knee flexion than you had before. So you're going to go down like this, more so. This is kind of a smaller step, but so you're gonna feel this a lot more in your quads than when we were like this. That's the Bulgarian split squat. All right, guys, that is it for my top favorite leg exercises for glute and leg growth. If you like this, make sure to give it a like, comment down below, give me a follow on Instagram, and if you want to see more videos like this, let me know down below as well. Until the next one, see you later.